There's two prospects that I want to focus on. I know that Marcus Blaze, PJ Duke, Masanosuke Ono are going to get all the attention in this class of 2025, and they deserve it. And I've had that argument already. Which ones? I can't even come to the conclusion which one is the best. They all possess their individual skill sets that make them, but that's the consensus top three. They are the top three. They're 1A, B, and C. And everybody that makes an argument for or against which prospect should be rated the highest is correct at the end of the day. But in that conversation, there is somebody that gets overlooked in the class of 2025 for Penn State. And then in 2026, another commit that I've referred to already, Jayden James. The 2025 wrestler is William Henckel. I'm going to talk about these two individuals here. Hankle first, because he's coming in with Duke, Blaze, and Ono. Hankle is another one of those wrestlers that has the potential to be a multi-NCAA champion. Top 20 pound-for-pound recruit in the entire nation for the class of 2025. Because he's in Penn State's class, he's ranked as the fourth prospect in this case. But in reality, he's not that far down. I think he's in a tier by himself almost, because he's not the elite of the elite, can come in and start right away. Part of that has to do with there's not really a clear path. The upper weights are pretty crowded, as we've talked about for Penn State. And Hankle is running into this dust cloud, but he's somebody that could emerge and potentially be a four-year starter. Levi Haynes is going to move on at 174. That's the plan, is that Hankle is now going to run into this competition and could be the guy after Levi Haynes. I know there's so many different possibilities. I'm just speaking of one, a hypothetical, because you could go through and say, well, Mitchell Messenbrink bumps up to 174, right? And stuff like that. It's not what I'm here to debate about, but he would be in that competition, and he would be an instant title contender at 174. I think a year of red shirt would do him very well to train alongside Messenbrink and Haynes for a year. Scrap with Rocco Welsh as well. But Hankle just shows how quickly he progresses. I think the thing that impresses me the most about Hankle is you watch the U.S. Open, and he goes up against Brock Mantanona, and he ends up winning the U.S. Open. He defeats Brock Mantanona. That one's a close one. That's a close battle. Mantanona ultimately took the lead. That's the younger brother of Bo, just for anybody wrestling fans might actually recognize that name. Both of them go to Michigan. One's the older brother, one's the younger brother. Brock is the younger brother. And Hankle ended up winning and got that bid into the best of three. Well, guess what? They met again. And this time around, it wasn't close. There was no back and forth. You weren't on the edge of your seat saying, hey, is Hankle going to get knocked out here? Is he going to have to wrestle back through to get to the World Team Trials best of three final at U20? No. It wasn't close the second time around. Hankle wasted absolutely no time. What was closer, because he ultimately pulled away in the U.S. Open, at the World Team Trials best of three, he teched him both times instantaneously, just like that. So that's what is so impressive about Hankle, is that he just gets better. He gets noticeably better every single time that he goes out and competes. So that's something worth mentioning about Hankle, is that he shouldn't be a prospect that is forgotten about when Blaze and Duke and Ono are going to get all of the attention. I think Hankle is right there in a category on his own, where a redshirt season would do him well. I think it would absolutely benefit him, but he's not an instant starter like a PJ Duke, Marcus Blaze, Ono in this class of 2025. And again, part of that has to do with outlook. But hey, in that, Blaze and Ono, I think, have a simpler situation where, are you going to be able to unseat Levi Haynes, who has been top three every single season? So it's not as clear cut, right? And then there's Jayden James. Jayden James in the class of 2026, consensus top three prospect, or top five at a minimum. Pound for pound in the nation, flipped from Virginia Tech to Penn State. James runs through U17. All right. Let's try my hand now moving up an age group, U20. James, unfortunately, it had to be Penn State versus Penn State. against Joe Seeley, someone that has been in the Penn State wrestling room for a year now, was a top 3 prospect in the class of 2024. So he's 2 years ahead of Jayden James. Now, I'm not going to be too critical of Joe Seeley here because I'm fully aware that he had surgery. We don't know for what, but he was dealing with an injury preseason and into the season, went through a procedure, and then came back and wrestled. That shows toughness. That shows grit. But Jaden James, who is 2 years behind in terms of training, in terms of experience, teched Joe Seeley and did not allow a point scored because Jaden James is an offensive powerhouse. But to show the defense against someone who's savvy, technically sound like a Joe Seeley, and the speed and the strength proved too much for him. Jaden James, class of 2026, doing that to a fellow Penn State affiliated wrestler because James is a commit. Joe Seeley's actually in the room, redshirt freshman season coming up. And Jaden James did that at the World Team Trials. Was he close to D Lockett? It didn't seem like it. I don't know what the necessary overall advantage was there. If you ask me, it looked like Jaden James was a little passive, was a little hesitant in that best of 3 final against Ladarian Lockett. But that has to do with the fact that I think that Lockett is so difficult to score on that you're going to be a little more selective with your shot attempts. You're going to be a little more strategic. And Lockett, I think, felt that sense of confidence. It also has to do with the fact that I didn't really like the layout or the way that the World Team Trials was structured for the U20. The wrestlers in James's case and anybody else that had to wrestle back through to get to that best of 3, and I guess that's the advantage of winning the US Open, and so you're waiting, you're sitting back, and you got a full gas tank and everything else. Some of those wrestlers went through 7-8 matches at the end of the day. This was all done in one day. I'm surprised the best of 3 wasn't saved for Sunday. This all carried out on Saturday. So James was probably exhausted at the end because it definitely seemed like it. Ladarian Lockett, D Lockett for Oklahoma State commit, class of 2025. It looked really good, right? I think he could start 4 years for Oklahoma State. And Jaden James got to that point. He got that far in the tournament. As somebody who just won U17 that's still got a year to go, he's the class of 2026, and he was the runner-up at the U20 level. So next year, when we have this conversation again, Jaden James very well might be that rep at 74 kilos. I would expect nothing less, actually, from Jaden James. So those were the other 2 prospects when Duke, Blaze, Ono, they're going to have the spotlight. William Henckel and Jaden James showed that they're here as well. And when the opportunity respectfully presents itself to them, they're not going to disappoint. We'll talk about some other results as well. For Penn State affiliated wrestlers, Connor and Cole Mirasola take 92 and 125 at U20. We'll talk about them coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions.